Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to this week's English Sadakaion program organized by Quantum Meditation Society, London. Today, we are going to talk about something that is at the core of everything that we do in life. That is, and everything we do for this one thing, and that is happiness. Like that's the goal of life, right? So um if you think about it, all of us want different things all the time. Some of us want to do well in our studies. If you're students, maybe we want to go into a very good university. Maybe we want to be a famous YouTuber. Maybe we want to earn a lot of money, be a celebrity. Whatever that is we want, or we want to have more friends, whatever that is that we want in life, we want it because we think that this thing will make us happy, right? I mean, that's at the, like, if we peel off all the layers of, but why do I want this? But why do you want this? But why do you want this? I want this. Usually it's because we think that thing will make us safe, and that or it will make us happy. And even when we think that this thing will make us safe, we think that, okay, if we are safe, we'll be happy. So I think we can agree that all of us want this thing that underlies everything that we're trying to do. That is our core goal in life. But there is a lot to think about, or a lot to understand in terms of what actually gets us to that goal that is a common goal for all of us, the goal of happiness. So the Dalai Lama was once asked, what's the purpose of life? And he said the same thing. He said, like, the purpose of life is to be happy, but the question is what it is that makes us happy. So in the recent years, say in the last 2 decades, there's been a lot of research, actually empirical research, trying to find out what it is that actually makes us happier. And the interesting thing is one of the big insights that's come out of this research is that our instincts about what will make us happy is usually or often wrong. So it's not intuition. I'm talking about just instinct. Like if all of you who are here today, if I ask you, like, what will make you happy? Maybe not here, not people who have been with quantum for a long time, but let's say we just get some random people, 20 random people. If we ask them, like, what do you think will make you happier? I think the most common answer one would get is like having more money, right? Having more money. Or someone will say, oh, if I'm famous, it will make me happy. Or some might say, if I get so and so to love me, that will make me happy. So the research show that it's not necessarily true. So one of the most famous courses that's taken place in the recent years on happiness is called it started in Yale University. So in Yale University, sometime in the last decade, I would say, maybe it's a little earlier, this psychology professor, she noticed that Yale, which is obviously a very, very prestigious university, so in a university like Yale, most of the students seem to be quite not very happy, quite depressed. So because she is a psychology professor, she had access to all this research that's been done on happiness in the recent years. she decided to run a course, teach a course on it. So she named her course Psychology and the Good Life. So you know what happens when you're registering for a course at for a university, right? There's a specific, students get to choose what course they will be taking. And there's a specific date, a specific time when the online registration is opened up and students register. So when that after that registration window, she looked at it and she saw like all the other courses, professors' courses, the graph was like here, maybe a few hundred, and then our course, Psychology of the Good Life, was hard, the graph, the bar went like up high somewhere, like it was, I think, literally in thousands. It was the most popular course at that point, 316 years of Yale's existence. And one-fourth of the total students in Yale had registered for that course. So that is how eager we all are to have a good life. So the interesting thing about her course, and after that, this kind of course has been introduced in many, many, many universities, including lots of universities in the UK, including Oxford and Cambridge and other universities as well. Interestingly, I have seen her course content because she's actually made it free. So anyone who is interested can actually go and look at it's the Yale course on well-being. You can find it and it's free, so you can go through it if you're interested. She spends a significant number of lessons in the beginning just debunking our happiness myths, or just showing us that what we normally think, what we instinctively think will make us happy, don't necessarily make us happy. So let's just go through the two big ones, and then we'll come to what actually does make us happy. So number one, money. So there's been a lot of research done on the relationship between money and happiness. And what these research mainly show is that, yes, if your income is at a level where it's very difficult for you to cover your regular expenses, rent, healthcare, education, then of course the lack of money will cause you a lot of stress. And from that level, if your income is increasing, yes, your happiness is also increasing. However, after a certain point, and I'm not going to give you any specific numbers because obviously it varies, right? From time to time, place to place. It depends on, the cost of living in the time and place where you're living in, right? So, but after a certain point, the happiness does not increase. That's what the research finds, that okay, if you come to this income in this place at this point in time, yes, up to this point, your happiness will increase. But after that, even if you keep on earning a lot more, it don't necessarily bring you more happiness. The happiness it brings you, extra income brings you, will be less and less and less and less and less, like extra happiness. So that's what research found. And why is that? Because when our income changes, our reference points, reference groups also change. What is a reference group? So just think, you as a person, human beings tend to compare ourselves with other people, right? It is not a nice thing to do. It doesn't help anyone. But there is something in human nature, something about our ego that makes us compare ourselves to other people. Now, all of us here who are here today, we are not comparing ourselves to all the people in the world, right? So me sitting here today, if some comparison enters my mind, it's not a comparison with a poor person, a very impoverished person in a Bangladeshi village, right? That's not who I'm comparing myself with. I'm also not necessarily comparing myself with Jeff Bezos. I'm not comparing myself with the richest person in the world, right? I'm not thinking like, why is he so rich and why am I so poor compared to him, right? So typically we compare ourselves to the people around us. The people are kind of close to us in our in socioeconomic or whatever status. And so the people we normally compare ourselves with is our reference group, our reference point. So we think, oh, so and so is doing so well. Maybe one of my friends, like, oh, we grew up as similar, but now she's doing so well. Then I might think like, oh, she's doing so well, but why can't do it, right? So that means that she is in my reference group. So what happens with more income is that our reference group changes. Our reference group changes. So if I am at a certain income level, I am comparing myself to some people. Say my income has now, for whatever reason, gone up a lot. What will happen? Maybe I will move to a different part of town. Maybe I'll move to a neighborhood that's a little wealthier. Maybe the children will go to different schools. Maybe I will start going on vacations in different places. I will maybe take a different class when I fly, right? So when all of these things are happening, what's happening? The people you are in your reference group are changing. So now you're not comparing yourself to that person. Now you're comparing yourself who your neighbor in this new posh neighborhood you moved to, right? So what happens? So now then you're seeing like, oh, you were so grateful to have moved to this neighborhood, but now you're like, oh, but I moved to this neighborhood, but I have this only one car, and my neighbor had three cars, and and their car is this brand or this brand or this brand, or so then the comparison doesn't stop. And you don't necessarily think about that when you think that, oh, more money will make you happy. You think that if I can only be part like that, I'll be so happy. But that part of that wanting doesn't stop. Yes, if there's an actual need, yes, and it's met, yes, you're happier. That's why the happiness increases with a certain point. But after that, your wanting and comparing doesn't stop. So you don't necessarily become much happier. And this has actually been shown in studies. Like there have been studies done on millionaires, and they were asked like, okay, how much income do you think you need to be kind of just cover the things that you would feel like, oh, relieved, like, oh, okay, I kind of cover most of the things I want to cover. I'm satisfied with my income now. And they say 3 million. So when you earn 40,000, you say like, okay, 100,000 is like to you like so amazing. But then when you're at 1 million, you're saying, oh, 3 million. So this is what it's actually true. It's real. It's been proved by research. Some of you may have heard of Tony Robbins, who is, he's one of the personal growth gurus in the West, very famous, and he's been doing it for a long time. So he's written many books, and his last book was on health, and before that, he wrote a book on finances and wealth and abundance. And because he's very well connected, he has coached a lot of famous people. He got to interviews like say like some of the 50 richest people in the US, some of them. So 50 of them he interviewed, and he said like, I think out of that 50, only 5 or 6 are happy. The rest of them are unhappy. So I'm saying this because you will make lots of decisions in life, and I just want to make it clear that quantum doesn't say that, oh, like, don't go after money. No, you can earn money. Of course you can. And we always say abundance is your birthright. Abundance is every human being's birthright. Freedom from the feeling of scarcity is every human being's birthright. However, if you only think more and more and more money is what I need to make you happy, you have the risk of going through a lot of your life and looking back and thinking like, oh, this thing I spent so much time and energy on did not really give me what I was expecting it to give me. So yes, earn money, but there are other things we need to make us happy. So that's like one thing, money. And let's go to the second thing that we think will make us happy, is a lot of us think will make us happy, is fame. I don't know if any of you think of it this way, but certainly when we're growing up, because we see so much news and so many things about celebrities. So we're all kind of enamored by celebrities and glamour and fame and all that sort of thing. But think of it this way. When someone becomes famous, they lose their anonymity, right? If you become famous, you lose your anonymity. Wherever you go, people recognize you. Wherever you go, people are judging you, right? You're held to a certain standard. If it is difficult for you, like to face the judgment of just the people around you, just this is something to consider. I'm not saying that, oh, people shouldn't be famous, but what would it feel like if you were like judged all the time, especially in this time of social media where people feel like they just can write anything about anyone. You often forget that the person, in the photograph is also a human being. So think of that, but also think of like, if fame really made people happy, why is it that so many celebrities have committed suicide? I mean, if you think about it, just think back and think of, like, in your mind, how many celebrities do you know that who have committed suicide? I mean, I can, uh, Robin Williams, like one of the most disappointing ones for me because I really liked him. But think of like Whitney Houston, think of Anthony Bourdain, think of Kate Spade. Like, so there are so many people, so many famous people whose fames, if you don't commit suicide, if you're happy, I hope we agree on that. So, that couldn't make them happy, right? So all this is to say that if you were not happy inside, these things can't make you happy. You can, if these things, if money especially, obviously you need a certain amount of money to go through life, and you should be wise financially, but just these things don't make you happy. And it's good that if you have a lot of money, if you have a lot of fame, it's good that they come as a byproduct of something you are giving, something you find meaningful, because then you wouldn't attach your identity with those things. You won't be so dependent on those things. Then you will be able to enjoy those things, take the good things about those things, but their ups and downs won't make you so scared, and you will still feel the enjoyment, the fulfillment that comes from contributing, having a fulfilling life. Okay, so let's move on to what actually does make us happy. So we've talked about this many times because it's one of the fundamental challenges of being human, is that our body is perishable, right? It's going to die. And because our body at some point is going to not exist, there is a big part of us that's developed to ensure survival. So a lot of how we think, how we are, the emotions we feel has to do with keeping us safe, keeping us alive. And one of the things that's evolved in us um, because of this need to survive is a lot of focus on lack, a lot of focus on threat, a lot of focus on negativity, a propensity towards negativity. Um, so scientists now know that our brain is wired in a way that A, we think about negative stuff more. I mean, someone in Guruji's last program actually asked, like, oh, why is it so difficult, like, to be positive? Why are we so negative all the time? So the way I understand is because it's so, say you're in a jungle, and in the jungle, there are fruits that, you can have, and there are tigers that can attack you. So if there is a wild animal when on your path to you're gathering something, you really, really, really need to remember that, right? You really need to remember that, oh, there's a wild animal in that area, and they may and I have to avoid that area to be safe, right? Otherwise, you won't be able to go to your apple or whatever. So our brains are typically wired in a way that we watch out for negative things more. Like we're thinking, like, is a threat going to come this way, threat going to come this way, even though we don't live in a jungle, but in our life, like, oh, where is the threat going to come from? Am I going to not do well in my exams? Is mommy going to be angry with me? Is my friend going to betray me? Is my friend who I like so much now is going to be friends with somebody else? Am I not going to do well in my exams? Am I going to so that's the brain goes to where the threat might come from. Next, number one. Number two is when something negative happens. So in a room, say 10 things are happening, right? Maybe you're sitting here listening to me, but when there's a negative thing that happens, we watch out for it more, but we over focus on the negative thing. What does it mean? So if you're listening to me, okay, you're listening, all good, or maybe not. Maybe you find it boring, but then a moth comes on flying, and you will like, suddenly you'd be like, all your attention will go to the moth, like, oh, whatever is your perceived negative thing. So we over focus on the negative thing. Number three, we feel negative emotions more intensely. We feel negative emotions more intensely. So, like when something good happens, the happiness you feel, unfortunately, is not as intense as the unhappiness you feel when something bad happens, or you interpret something that happened as bad. And the number four, negative experience, we remember them more. So they get fast tracked into our memory. So like this thing of like, going from short-term memory to long-term memory, all these things are kind of like sort of bypass, and like a big negative thing is like now in our long-term memory, like, oh, that thing happened. So don't judge yourself, or don't be hard on yourself for experiencing negative thoughts, negative emotions. It's we are kind of wired that way. But what's nice is that the brain can be rewired, right? You know that, right? So we have talked about it here. We'll talk about it more because it's one of the fundamental things. Our brain is elastic. New connections can grow in our brain to the very last day of your life with new experiences, new thoughts, new emotions, so the brain can be rewired, but rewiring it to a more positive state will require work. So that's not how we're like. Most of us are like by default, and that is why all the religions and and all like self-help people and psychologists, positive psychologists, all of these, all of all these groups try so hard and emphasize so much on just cultivating gratitude, just this balance, this bias we have towards negativity, just to, you're not even like being super just focused on the positive. Even just to bring yourself to balance, you really need to focus on, train yourself to focus on the positive things. And what is focusing on positivity called? What's that emotion? That's called being grateful, right? So that's gratitude. And every single religion emphasizes gratitude. We'll just talk about gratitude today, and then we'll talk about other points in the next one, okay? Because this is just so important, so fundamental. If you think about Islam, right? If you open the Quran and if you start reading, the first ayat, the first thing you will say is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin, right? So what is Alhamdulillah? It's expressing happiness for the mercy of God. You can say it's you can say it's the abundance of the universe, the love of the universe that's all around us, that we absolutely take for granted, right? So that is what you're doing, trying to be grateful. And then I don't know how many of you have had the chance to read it. I mean, if you're Muslim, you should read, because you should know about your religion so that you can form your own opinions. It's not that if you are an independent human being, you form your opinions about religion, whatever. But it's good to know and then decide. So then in Surah Al-Araf, there are a few verses which talk about what happened when Shaitan, the devil, was ousted from heaven, right? So he was considered an angel, a Firishta, and he had worshipped Allah, God, universe, whatever your term, for a long time. And then when human beings were created, Allah wanted him to bow down to them, but he was like, no, I'm made of fire. Why would I bow down to someone made of clay, blah, blah, etc., etc. Okay, and then Allah said, no, you're ousted from, and then he said, okay, give me the power so that the day of resurrection, so that I can actually get into their minds. His words, like, will go to them from left, right, front, back. I will enter them. And then what did he say? He said, and I promise you something to that effect, that you will find most of them ungrateful. That is his that is his promise. That's Shaitan's job, to make us ungrateful. He's not saying I'm going to make them do shirk. He's not saying I'm going to make people kill. He's not saying all those things that we talk about so much, right? He's not saying that I'm going to make them eat pork. He's not saying these things. He's saying I will make them ungrateful. Because when we fall from gratitude, that makes us trespass in other ways. So think of it, I'm a mom, right? So what happens? When do I yell at my sons? I yell at my sons when for some reason, I'm feeling negative inside. When I'm feeling very calm and happy inside, even if they do something, I can handle it in a proactive way. So when we become negative inside, we're much more likely to do things that we shouldn't do. So gratitude is key in all religions. Let me just tell you about one more religion that we don't necessarily know about that much. Think of Judaism, right? So in Bengali, we call Jewish people Yehudi, right? So this is a Hebrew term for Yehudi. Do you know what that means? It means thankful. So for them, the goal is to be thankful. So again, the same goal, and every religion, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, all of these religions talk about being thankful. So we have to train ourselves to be thankful. Okay, so I'm going to give you 5 ways to be thankful, okay? So one that's in quantum, we do a lot, is, and our teacher, mentor, guru tells us to do is like every morning when I realize that, okay, I'm now awake, I haven't even opened my eyes, I say, thank God, or Shukr Alhamdulillah, or Hori Om, or in whatever way, thank you, universe, whatever way we feel comfortable, because words are just words. It's the inner feeling that matters. We express our gratitude just for having another day, because every day a lot of people die in our sleep, and their sleep, we don't think of it. We take being alive for granted, right? But if every morning I can just tell myself like, oh, I'm alive, I have another chance for go for the things I want. If we can really make that a habit, it really changes our day. And then the morning sets the tone for the day, right? Maybe you've heard other people say that. So if you, in the morning, you can cut off from what happened yesterday and you do a fresh start with gratitude, it will set the tone for the day. Something else I do, which I think I've showed you, my gratitude journal, or I write like 5 things that have happened in the last 24 hours that I'm grateful for. What this does is like it brings me back, takes me back to the positive moments, because we're talking about how we focus on the negative, right? But the positive we just take for granted. But what will happen is like this, when I'm writing, I have to think back on those moments. And when I think back on those moments, it makes me a little happier, because it brings me the positive feeling that I felt. So that's another way of like retraining my brain by going back to those positive things to dwell more on the positive emotions, because the brain thinks like it's not necessary, right? Okay, number 3 is what psychologists called savoring. So when you're doing something that's like, especially with your senses, like eating, right? We should, like, it's good to stop for a moment and make an intention, like, I'm going to savor. So whatever you're eating, if you just, and all of us, we know in quantum, we usually pray before we have our meals. We express gratitude before we have our meals. And then if you decide to like, okay, I'll eat slowly and I will really keep my focus on the taste of this thing. Because sometimes even if you get the thing you wanted the most, like ice cream, you get your ice cream, maybe some of you have actually given up sugar. That's amazing if you've done so, but even if you haven't and you're still having ice cream, that's okay for now, but hopefully one day, you'll be able to. So you just savor the first spoonful. Like first, this is so good. Then you're like, you know, mind has moved on to something else. But if you make an intention to savor, that will, that's something that will increase your overall gratitude and appreciation of life. So savoring. Number 4 is like voluntarily interrupting something that you're used to consuming on a regular basis. Like if you watch something every day, say, and then one day you decide like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to see how it is, what it is to not have this thing. That actually makes us appreciate those things more. I'll tell you one personal story. So when I was younger, we didn't have that many devices. So TV was a big thing for us. So one time, I'm older now. Our TV, something happened to our television, and something was off, and it took us a lot of time to get it fixed or get a new one. So I think I went through like maybe a month or more without television. And then once it came back, I was feeling, oh my God, this is such a wonder of life. There's a box through which you can see people talking. I was like feeling like this thing, TV, is some kind of a big wonder. Because what? Because I'd interrupted the consumption for a certain amount of time. So if you want to do that voluntarily, you can do that. That will actually increase your happiness more, a great gratitude more. And the number 5 is something, we talked about reference groups today, like reference points. So once in a while, what you should do is like you should think of who are my reference groups. My friends, maybe if maybe your friends are oh, so and so's mom is so nice, or so and so's mom is going to take them somewhere, so and so mom is going to buy them this or that. But think like, okay, I'm not going to think of this reference point of this friend. Let me just open my mind up. Where am I in terms of so many people in the world? And pick someone who doesn't have any of the things you have, and just remember where you are today. It's where what that girl is today, who is, I don't know, who is like a refugee today, who is having people get killed around them. It's not, they don't have much to do about it, right? It's like, it's just where they're born. It's just in the situation they were born, right? We could have been, you could have been, I could have been there. But how often do we think that way? So once in a while, just stop and reset your reference point, because don't just automatically take someone just a little above you as your, who has a little more than you as your reference point, because as we say, that doesn't work. So once in a while, just reset your reference point. And in quantum, what we do is sometimes we go and we have these programs where we just think of everything we're thankful for, and when we go deep into it, I realize that nothing, my body, my looks, nothing is something that I could have given myself. Everything has come from somewhere. I mean, you can say it religiously, someone created me, or even if you don't say it that way, but what I consider, I couldn't have given me myself this. So it's helpful to remind ourselves these things, that have regular practices to overturn the negative bias of our brain. Okay, so let me just quickly recap. So one is like just expressing thank you for being alive first thing in the day. Number two is like keeping a gratitude journal. Number three is savoring. Number four is interrupting consumption. Number five is resetting your reference point. Okay, so I'm giving you five different strategies, because gratitude is so key. If you do these things from time to time, it really will help you with life. Okay, so I don't want to go any further today. Happiness is a deep topic. I will tell you some more in our next session. We'll continue on the happiness and what we now know about what makes us unhappy and what we can do. And many, as I said, many of those things are not what we think of instinctively. So, okay, so hope you will, some of these things will be useful for you. I'm now going to start our meditation. Our meditation is happiness meditation. We're going to do the happiness meditation today. Okay, that was our meditation for today. Hopefully you were able to, do the meditation without any problems. So yeah, so that's our English Sadakaion for this week. Hopefully you got some insights that would be helpful for your life. Next week we will continue this theme, because there are more a few other things we definitely want to talk about what makes us happy. But that's it for this week. Have a good rest of the weekend, and see you next week. Thank you very much. Thank you.